Hey Zen fam, you know what's funny? Every once in a while I come on here and add somebody who is a PlayStation person. I mean, PlayStation where I have spent the majority of my gaming time as a human being on this planet Earth, Mars. I have given Sony a sore bum for many a verbal smackdown over the years for some of their absolutely boneheaded decisions. But, and this is a big but, sometimes their boneheaded decisions are born about because of us. Allow me to elaborate. You see, they'll go, oh, we're doing this thing for market forces, and we'll go, God, no. They'll go, oh, we're doing this thing because it's this or that or the other. And we'll go, no, listen to us. And then because sometimes they do listen to us, because we're such a contradictory bunch, they can't help but do wrong. Example? Fine. Here comes the example. For ages and ages and ages, we were saying to Sony, oh, you're too much of a walled garden. You need to put your games in more places so you can earn money and earn more development and, draw people towards PlayStation. So PlayStation said, you know what, you're right. We're going to put some games on other platforms and we're going to put a bunch of our games on PC. They put a bunch of their games on PC. Sales were poop. It's that simple. Now, yes, some people did buy games on PC, and some people thought it'd be nice to have a PlayStation as well, because not everything comes, and it's clear that Sony do put out good games. There were some sales, but a lot of people are saying there weren't enough sales to justify the development costs of making PC performative PlayStation titles. The dev costs were not sufficiently covered by the sales. So, recently Sony have pulled back saying, we're not doing games for PC anymore. As soon as Sony said, we're not doing games for PC anymore, people were out there going like, oh, typical Sony. Oh, they'll not listen to us. They listened to you to put the games on PC. Then you told them that you didn't. That it was like they were losing their edge. They were losing what it was to be Sony, and they were just putting their games everywhere. And it took away the whole thing of console exclusivity. So they brought back in. They went back to the area of console exclusivity, having games that were just for PlayStation, just for that ecosystem. And then everybody complains, goes, "Oh, I thought you were doing games for PC, and now you're just doing games for PlayStation." That's what they were doing before. You told them to do the other thing. They did the other thing. And you chastised them for it. It's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. You can't please anybody. When you're Sony, apparently, everybody tells you to do this. You do that. Then they tell you that this is wrong. So then you retract it. And then you get harmed for doing the retraction. Nuts. It's nuts. So no wonder Sony is seen as always doing the wrong thing, because even when it's doing the right thing, it's still doing the wrong thing. That has got to be the ultimate in, I don't know, I don't have words for it. I don't have words for it. And I'm a YouTuber. My thing is to have words for it. It's ridiculous. It's nonsensical. It's daft as a brush. So now that Sony has decided to pull back into just being a PlayStation only platform, hopefully things are going to start to look up and we're going to get a bit more dev money centered into PlayStation. And this might be bore out by how we're hearing that they're going to be delving into older titles, bringing some games back. Keep hearing all this stuff about there might be remasters, reimaginings, rebootings of classic games from across the years of PlayStation. We've been hearing talk about, obviously there's been the reissue of Soul Reaver. Yes, I very much want to have a go at that because I loved that back in the day. But they're also talking about bringing back Infamous 1 and 2. Now, there's been videos I've done in the past, and campaigns I've done in the past, and art I've done in the past, where I would love to see Infamous 1 and 2 as one game with modern updated graphics and physics and stuff. Still keep the original story. Probably try and, clean up the audio, but still have all the original stuff. But just make it look like it belongs in now. Maybe obviously have a little bit of tweak to like how the story runs, so that the story feels less like a story from back then and a story of now, but still have the same impact, still have the same bite. Also, they've been talking about doing the Getaway. The Getaway, yes! I mean, the Getaway has always been a game that I missed back in the day and would love to play now. I mean, even if it was to do my video that I made, it's got to be like, several years ago now, I made the video where it was like doing Grand Theft Auto Edinburgh, where I talked about a Grand Theft Auto style Edinburgh game where you're doing stuff in my city, coming from rags to riches, living in different places, getting in car chases and causing violence and robbing stuff, and basically building like a small criminal empire, and and you would live in like different places. Like you'd live in high flats at first, and then you get like a proper house, and then you get like a big house, and a level up as you go, and drive a series of increasingly nicer cars as you come up through the criminal ranks, as it were. So all that kind of stuff, yeah. Actually get into the games that we miss. Bring back some titles from back in the day. How much have we called for that? I mean, bring back MotorStorm. Yes! And of course, I've always been like, bring back Mag. And bring back PlayStation Home. We're getting some of this stuff already because in this month's PlayStation Plus, we've got Time Crisis. Now, I'd like to know how that's going to work. So have I downloaded that? I'll have to check. But how does Time Crisis work now? Because we don't have light guns anymore. Because light guns don't work with modern tellies. There are light guns you can buy that work on modern tellies, but I don't think they work with PlayStations. I think they're like for dedicated arcade units for the home and for like PC. Now yes, I did do that video about 2 years ago, I think it was now, where the idea of using the power of PlayStation VR 2 and hooking that up with like a unit that could like house the controllers for the PSVR 2. I forget what you call them now. Not DualSense, whatever they're called. Anyway, those hand controllers are lovely. And if they could be integrated into a gun design, or have a gun design which basically like incorporates some of the controls from those, but it's just a shell, so you feel like a gun, and it could like sense your like movements and stuff, and it would have like strips of light down it that like the PlayStation camera could read and understand the position of the gun, so then you're pointing in virtual space and shooting at stuff, and what you're actually pointing is where you're actually shooting. So it would be like a light gun game, but not a light gun game because it wouldn't be a light gun, but it'd be pointing around virtual space. And it would be, a fun thing for people to have, because they could have guns of any type, from any kind, from all kinds of fantasy to reality. And you could have whatever you want. They could have pistols and rifles and stuff. You could even have a selection of weapons that you pick up for different parts of the game. And then obviously you'd use the insider tracking to make sure you pick up the right weapon and stuff. It could be fun, like you could be playing a like something like this Fallout behind me. And if you want to pick up a rocket launcher, you actually pick up a rocket launcher. You want to like go in with a shotgun, you actually pick up a shotgun. Obviously, that's when you get into the serious money, because you're having all these molded weapons with the light patterns on them, or at least the paint patterns on them that are would be pick upable by the PlayStation HD camera. And that would be perfect for something like Time Crisis. Now, I don't think Time Crisis is actually a VR title, although it probably could be. But I don't think they ever animated the backgrounds for it. And you know how it's like, as soon as you put on that VR helmet, one of the first things you want to do is turn your head and look and see what's behind you in the virtual environment. Can't help but do it. So you maybe could have the camera sensor technology and the gun, and still just use the gun, and maybe even have the sights, look down the sights and actually fire at the stuff. And you obviously calibrate the weapon by pointing to the extremes, like the top corner, the bottom corner of your telly, so that it understands how big the telly is, understands how far away you are, and yada yada yada, and it would be able to measure the distance and stuff for the markings of the gun. For Time Crisis, that'd be brilliant. But I think what they've probably done is you're probably just using the gyro controls. So you probably just do, and then there's probably a wee cursor on the screen, and it's probably dashing about. So you're probably having to flick your controller about. And I imagine for the reload, you probably would do that to do the reloading, because if you've ever played Time Crisis, and I imagine a good amount of the younger guys and girls out there in the Zen Fam who haven't played Time Crisis back in the arcade, because that's where it came from. What you had was you had a gun, and you had a flip paddle at your foot. So you would flip the paddle at the foot, and your character would duck into cover, and the weapon would reload with ammunition. And then you'd release your foot off the paddle. Your character in game would spring back out of cover, a fully loaded weapon, bang, 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 bang. And you would use the cover, as as an actual cover. So if it was too much going on, you could cover, come up, bang, bang, cover, come up, bang, cover. And obviously the shorter the time you're in the cover, the more you go through, because it was a time attack mode when it came to the original PlayStation version, and that would be kind of lovely. But I'm getting away from the main point here. The point of it is that it's actually a good thing that PlayStation are going back to being a walled garden. Yes, okay, they're not having those extra sales and those extra points of drawing people into PlayStation, but the fact of the matter was, it was not working out the way that people said it would. I even thought it would work. I was all for it. I thought, this is a good thing that Sony's stretching out and increasing their market share. But it proved not to work. So, bring it back in-house, bring into the walled garden, redirect those funds into making games just for PlayStation. But that's the important thing. The games have to be made. It's not just enough to cut that part of development off. The other parts of development have to be bolstered if you're cutting it off. If you're taking funds from here, you have to go here. And if that happens, we get more games, we get more awesome games, and there's more reasons for people to buy PlayStations. There's more reason for people to buy PlayStations, then more games will get made. And round and round and round we go. To hopefully, eventually, we actually have plenty of reasons for PlayStation 5 to exist, and we can actually move it past this narrative that there are no games on PS5. When those of us who are PS5 owners actually go, no, if you look at it, there are actually quite a lot of games, admittedly, not as much as PS4, definitely not as much as PS3, But that's because the turnaround from making games for those systems back then was far less, because the games now are far more complicated. I have expressed on many an occasion how it is with modern games and why they cost what they cost and why it takes so long to make them. Because you have a game with assets, and these assets are just more lighting conditions, more textures, more physics, more. It's just deeper, bigger, stronger, more complicated games. The more bits you add to a thing, the longer it's going to take to make, the longer it's going to take to test, the longer it's going to take to QA. You know, you gotta make sure that it works. You gotta make sure that it works under all kinds of experienced gamers and how they're going to change the game. I mean, almost every game that ever comes out, they put it out and the players find ways to do things with the game that the developers never thought could be done. Case in point, speedrunning. Years ago, the idea of speedrunning didn't exist. Now there are entire YouTube channels based purely on speedrunning games. So, yes, Sony will make a hash of it sometimes. Quite a lot of it, actually. But on this particular occasion, where they have listened to us and then re-listened to us to go back to what they were doing and still get stick for it, I personally believe they've made the right move. Go back to the walled garden, make the games, make the system cooler. And then once you've actually got the games made, and we've bought the games and we've taken all that we can get out of the PS5, really extended it, really played it for what it's worth, then, and only then, say around about 2029, 2030, then you can think about doing a PS6 that should and must be fully on system backwards compatibility. No more this digital PS1, PS2, possibly PS3. No. Stick the disc in the machine. Stick a PlayStation 1 disc in, stick a PlayStation 2 disc in, stick a PlayStation 3 disc in, stick a PlayStation 4 disc in, stick a PlayStation 5 disc in. Now, probably can't do that for Vita or PSP, but those games could be available digitally. And if there's still a touchpad on the PlayStation 6 controller, then that PlayStation 6 controller can do some of the stuff that like we could do on the Vita. And that would be absolutely lovely. There'll obviously be one or two games that like just wouldn't come across very well. It'd be really hard to play like Murasaki Baby with a controller rather than like rather than the touch controls, which is what makes that game work. Because Murasaki Baby was just something else. Love that game. But yeah, I'd love your opinions down below, guys. Do you think Sony has made the right move by going back to the walled garden? Because I do. But then again, I could be wrong. You tell me. Hashtag support Scottish YouTubers. And of course, as always, no bother.